Cannabis Common Sense, the show that tells the truth about marijuana and the politics behind its prohibition.
Good evening and welcome to another exciting edition of Cannabis Common Sense. We have another great show for you tonight. Right here behind me is one of Portland's mayoral candidates, Jesse Sponberg. Next to me is a longtime medical marijuana activist and the founder of the Lifevine Foundation, Mr. Martin Martinez. Standing by in the wings, we're happy to welcome back John Cornett. And he's got some groovy tunes to play for us. And we have Hemp News. We'll be taking your phone calls after the music. But as we always do, we'll buy a few precious moments by bringing on the infamous dancing cannabis leaves.
I feel the force.
Our first story tonight is from our nation's capital, Washington, D.C. According to a study by the nation's largest automobile club, 6 states that allow marijuana use have legal tests to determine driving while high that have no scientific basis. Per se limits for THC are arbitrary and may be misclassifying drivers who are not behaviorally impaired, according to the findings of a study published this week by the American Automobile Association Foundation for Traffic Safety. Per se driving limits criminalize the act of operating a motor vehicle if the driver possesses detectable amounts of specific drugs or drug metabolites above a set threshold. Under these laws, drivers are guilty per se of violating the traffic safety laws, even absent of evidence of demonstrable impairment. 5 states, Montana, Nevada, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Washington State, presently impose per se limits for the detection of specific amounts of THC in the blood, while 11 states, Arizona, Delaware, Georgia, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Michigan, Oklahoma, Rhode Island, Utah, and Wisconsin, impose zero tolerance per se standards, where you can have no cannabis at all in your blood, even though all people have endogenous cannabinoids in their blood that are not discernible from artificial or plant-based ones. So everyone tests positive for some THC in their blood because of the endocannabinoids, anandamide, that can't be distinguished from THC. However, the AAA report concluded, quote, a quantitative threshold for per se laws for THC following cannabis use cannot be scientifically reported, end quote. This is because the body metabolizes THC in a manner that's significantly distinct from alcohol. The Automobile Association's finding is similar to that of the U.S. National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, which acknowledges, quote, it's difficult to establish a relationship between a person's THC blood or plasma concentration and performance-impairing effects. It is inadvisable to try and predict effects based on blood THC concentrations alone, end quote. AAA's Safety Foundation said it's not possible to set a blood test threshold for THC or tetrahydrocannabinol, the chemical in marijuana that makes people high, and the laws should be scrapped. Say that again. AAA says the laws against marijuana in your blood should be scrapped. Yet the law in 5 states of the 6 states that automatically presume a driver guilty if that person tests higher than the limit and not guilty if it's lower. As a result, drivers who are unsafe may be going free while others may be wrongfully convicted, the AAA's foundation said. The foundation recommends replacing the laws with ones that rely on specifically trained officers backed up by a test for THC rather than a specific threshold. The foundation recommended scrapping the laws in Colorado, Montana, Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Washington, even as several more states consider adopting similar laws. Marshall Donnie, AAA's president and CEO said, quote, "There is understandably a strong desire by both lawmakers and the public to create legal limits for marijuana impairment in the same manner we do for alcohol. In the case of marijuana, this approach is flawed and not supported by scientific research," end quote. 9 states have zero tolerance laws for driving, and marijuana that make only the presence of THC in a driver's blood illegal, but also the presence of its metabolites, which can linger for weeks after use. And, again, endogenous cannabinoids, anandamide, produced by every person's nervous system, is indistinguishable from THC. So there's the conundrum. Out in the mountains in Colorado, law enforcement officers and top prosecutors in Colorado want a 2-year pause on the new marijuana laws to give officers a chance to catch up. In a letter sent to lawmakers last week, leaders of the 3 main groups of law enforcement officials in Colorado said local police, quote, "cannot keep up with the quantity and speed of constantly changing marijuana law," end quote. The letter said that there have been 81 marijuana-related bills in just the past 4 years in Colorado. These groups wrote, quote, "regulation seems to change on a daily basis, and this process must be slowed down," end quote. The solution the group proposes is a 2-year moratorium on any changes of the current law with regard to marijuana legalization unless a strong public safety nexus is established. The letter was sent by the Colorado Association of Chiefs of Police and County Sheriffs of Colorado and the Colorado District Attorney's Council. In addition to the moratorium, the letter asked lawmakers to fund 2 enforcement work groups that the organizations formed to keep track of marijuana legalization's impacts and to train police officers. The letter also asked the legislature to create a state marijuana liaison to law enforcement. From Montgomery, Alabama Governor Robert Bentley signed legislation into law this week expanding legal protections for qualified patients who use cannabidiol-dominant extracts for therapeutic purposes. Under Alabama's legislation, House Bill 61, or Lenny's Law, patients may possess extract preparations of CBD that also contain up to 3% THC for the treatment of seizure-related debilitating conditions. The Alabama law further states that no state agency may initiate proceedings to remove a child from a home if that child and or his or her guardians are using CBD in compliance with this new Alabama statute. It does not provide for a legal in-state source for CBD-specific products, however. This new law takes effect next month on June 1st. Separate legislation signed into law in 2014 in Alabama only permits the use of CBD by patients participating in a state-sponsored clinical trial. Trial data provided by the University of Birmingham earlier this year reported that an estimated 90% of the subjects with pediatric epilepsy showed some improvement following treatment with CBD extracts. Back from Washington, D.C., United States treaty obligations do not mandate that the federal government limit marijuana production to a single licensed facility, according to written statements provided by the Department of State to Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, a Democrat from New York. The department's statements run counter to opinions expressed by the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration, or DEA, which has long alleged that there can only be one federally licensed cultivator of marijuana for research purposes, and that is the University of Mississippi in Oxford, Mississippi, as overseen by the U.S. National Institute on Drug Abuse, or NIDA. In 2011, the DEA rejected an order from its own administrative law judge calling on the agency to issue additional cultivation licenses. The agency claimed that allowing such activity would be inconsistent with the United States' obligations under the Single Convention Treaty and other United Nations drug control treaties. But in response to an inquiry from Senator Gillibrand, representatives from the State Department's Bureau of International Narcotics and Law Enforcement have now denied the DEA's claim, stating, quote, "If a party to the Single Convention Treaty issued multiple licenses for the cultivation of cannabis for medical and scientific purposes, that fact alone would not be sufficient to conclude that the party was acting in contravention of the convention," end quote. Following the State Department's admission, Senator Gillibrand stated, quote, "The DEA should issue new licenses to supply medical researchers and stop letting antiquated ideology stand in the way of modern medical science," end quote. Under federal regulations, clinical trials protocols involving cannabis meet approval from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, the DEA, and NIDA, and they must use source material provided by the University of Mississippi. No other substance, including other Schedule I controlled substances, face such severe restrictions. In 2012, our Measure 80 initiative was the only law ever proposed that for regulating legal marijuana that tried to comply with the Single Convention Treaty. No other regulatory model for cannabis had ever done that before or since. That's the end of our hemp news segment tonight. We're now going to jump over to Mr. John Cornett. How are you doing tonight, John?
I'm doing great, Paul. I got here alive in the mountains. You know, I don't like bullies. I swear to God, I don't like bullies. And I guess I'm in the right place because there sure do seem to be a lot of bullies bullying us around.
Yeah.
I wrote this. I began writing this music here about 3 or 4 years ago, I guess, and I put together a few pieces for I'm dedicating this to the people that we've lost. We've lost a lot of people around here. It's really hard for us to take it. You know, we're dealing with it, and we love them. And this goes out to you all the departed.
All right, Mr. John Cornett. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
That was very good. We'll have John back at the end of the show. I'd like to welcome Jesse Spomberg. Welcome, Jesse.
Hi,
and
boss.
Martin Martinez.
Hi, good to see you.
Martin, you are the founder of the Lifevine Foundation in Seattle.
Yes.
When did you first found the Lifevine Foundation?
Well, it was, I was in a motorcycle crash in 1986, and so I've been using medical cannabis since then. The medical cannabis was not on the radar in America at that time, and there was very little known in the public. So I went about 10 years using cannabis covertly, not talking about it. Then I was arrested in 1996 for growing
In Washington
cannabis.
State.
Yes.
That was a
Seattle.
couple of years before Washington's medical marijuana law was passed.
Well, it's, yeah, it
that
goes,
had passed in '98.
right. My doctor filed the Medical Use Act of 1998.
Uh-huh.
So I was a big part of the initial initiative, and I've been participating in the legalities of the legislature and local city government for all these years. Lifevine, I was founded in 1999.
Right when the law was implemented in Washington State.
Well, we thought it was going to really go our way. You know, we thought finally we had some protection from the drug war. But it actually turned out to be sort of the opposite. Patients became targets in the war on marijuana. And so I ended up spending a lot of years helping other people defend their cases after my own case in 1996. Testified in a lot of trials.
I did that a lot as well. In fact, you know, we have helped over 250,000 Americans across 12 states get their medical marijuana permit. When we first opened in Washington State, that was in 2004, we started seeing a lot of patients, and I get called in as an expert witness in all of these states, but we got called into Washington State more than any other state. Even though Washington State only amounts to about 25% of our business, I'd say it amounted to about 90% of our doctor's time spent in court defending patients. I went in on at least 100 different cases. Sometimes I appeared 4 or 5 times over a year period of time, like out in Pasco for some old guy that only had 2 little plants. You know, it was unreal the way Washington's law enforcement rebelled against the medical marijuana Act.
Especially in the outlying areas. In Seattle, it's not been so bad. But in the rural areas, the police are really taking a dim view of this change.
Right. I said there was kind of evolution, and the bigger the county was, the faster that evolution took place,
Of course, yeah.
where they'd have to litigate some marijuana cases, and once they found they got thrown out a few times, then the law enforcement started to take account of the law. But that happened quicker in Seattle and Tacoma. I know Tacoma was really against it. But then in smaller counties, it was a lot longer drawn out process. They're still trying to prosecute patients across Washington, aren't they?
Yes, if you break the rules, yeah.
Even if you don't break the rules, like the Kettle Falls 5, they got thrown into federal court, even though they were in compliance with the rules. No, it's been a real mess for patients. Let's, Jesse, you've been running for mayor. You were doing the Fight Church. I know you've been a long-time activist for many causes here in Portland.
Just remember I had you on my show before you invited me on your show.
That's right. I remember that. So
That
I'm
was
glad
great.
we
You're
can
a
have
great
you on
guest.
tonight.
I've respected you from afar for a long time, and then a couple years ago we got lucky enough to become friends.
Yeah.
And I really consider you a valued person in the community. You know, when I talk about my campaign, I always mention the sincere personal relationships that I have in the community, you know, and a lot of them come from, you know, the cannabis family. I've been a medical marijuana patient since I think like 2004. So I had a wrist surgery. So I had a wrist surgery, and it's full of scar tissue, and it wasn't put back together very well. So
I got a bad wrist myself, so I got a limited range of motion.
we probably have the weakest arm wrestling match ever.
Yeah, we won't do that. We won't do that.
So I medicate, and then I was pretty vocal trying to get marijuana legalized. But now that, legalized is the incorrect term, right? Regulated.
You know, I still like legalized. I
too.
really think, you know, every individual has the right freedom of consciousness. You know, and anything less than that is an intrusion on our individual rights. We really need to expand natural individual rights. You know, the courts have held that corporations and people are the equivalent in terms of definitions of the word individual. But I believe that artificial individuals like corporations and the government should have less rights than natural individuals like people.
Or dogs.
Yeah. And so
Or water.
You're running for
Or
mayor
water,
though.
like a stream,
Yeah.
or a mountain, or a forest, or
Yeah.
a beach.
Yeah.
I'm big into land rights as well as personal rights. So yeah, I'm running for mayor. And besides, you know, my regular platform is social justice, environmental stewardship, and accountability. I want to be the person that leads Portland into the future of marijuana industries. You know, not just safe access for patients, not just easy access for recreational people, but, you know, really pushing the envelopes of business and inventions and expos and festivals. And, you know, I mean, when you think about how much money, like, for example, the Seattle Hemp Fest brings into Seattle annually, you know, and then you think that, then you compare that and contrast that to what the Portland hemp stock looks like, you know, under a city council that all 5 of them admit they don't smoke pot. They've never been to hemp stock at all. You know, they're not really qualified to lead us into the future. And either are most of the people running against me. In fact, Jules Bailey actually voted against legalization, but somehow he still got an endorsement from one of the marijuana lobbies, which just
How did that happen?
Cash ruins everything around me, bro.
Right.
Cash ruins everything around me.
Well, you know, that's the problem that's inherent in representative government, even though you're running to be a representative. It's inherently corrupt.
It is.
If you are electing someone to represent you, inevitably, some portion, in some cases, like in the New York legislature, they all are corrupt. You know, here in Oregon, we have less corruption than many other places, but there's still inevitably a lot of corruption going on.
We get a real low grade when we're reviewed. We get D's and F's, you know.
And you've been working on homeless issues as well.
Heck yeah. So despite what everybody else says, they don't really work with homeless people. They'll tell you a story about Jeremy's mom from some soup kitchen they worked in 1992 or something. You know, I'm actively engaged in the street struggle, not just with my voice and my politics, but with my physical body. You know, I routinely go and eat dinner with these people and help them. So the clincher, and I guess I'll tell you on your show because this is like breaking news.
All right.
So 2.5 years ago, I slid into a foreclosure with the goal of creating a prototype for how to use foreclosed zombie homes as community centers, which would also double as safe places for homeless people to sleep. So when you say you
slid into a foreclosure, you mean you moved into a foreclosed home?
Yes. So I got lucky. So my dear mother, rented a house for a long time. The landlord fell through. It went into foreclosure. My mom's an older woman, not very political, as you might imagine. And so she said, I'm moving. And I said, well, that's great. You move, lady, and I'll slide in. Because what this city needs, as it's being destroyed, is somebody to be the catalyst for us to all stop. You know, the incrementalism that has us so desensitized to the destruction of our community, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because it happens on such a routine basis that
this
even
incredible
the most
gentrification is just pricing anybody who doesn't have a lucrative job out of the housing market here in Portland.
You know, and even the most sincere and dedicated and empathetic person eventually becomes desensitized, you know. So the thing that the city needs is somebody to put on the brakes. Just to say, stop, Portland, stop. Let's reevaluate what we're doing, right? So there needs to be somebody that makes this catalyst moment. So here's the thing. Right now, as a sincere candidate for mayor, you know, when 40% of the city still hasn't voted yet, and there's 200,000, you know, ballots still out, and you only need 75,000 to win. I don't come with campaign stuff because I'm not a politician. You know what I'm saying? My name is Jesse Sponberg. You ask about me in the streets, ask about me in the homeless camps, ask about me at City Hall, too.
You have a website, though, right?
Yeah, SponbergForMayor.com or Ozone2016.com. So I have this model for how to use this zombie house, and Monday morning we'll cut the ribbons on it. And it will be a prototype for how the city can affordably and effectively shelter these women right now that are living on the Springwater Trail and sometimes getting raped as many as twice a day. You know, there's real problems in this city. And so now where am I transitioning with that? Then you say, Jesse, where do you get revenue? Then we go to a debate and they say, other candidates, where do you find revenue? And the other candidates will say to you, oh, we're going to cut programs or we're going to raise taxes. And I sit there with my hands on my face like that kid that got left at home. And I just think about all the revenue possibilities that these other municipalities are raking in from marijuana. And that our city council is so inept and so befuddled by this new Sutter's Mill, this gold mine, this gold rush of new industry. You know what I'm saying? We're on the frontier. We should be setting the norm for how the rest of the world reacts to legislation. But we can't, because we just keep electing these people that are beholden. You know, it's no secret that we passed the no smoking in the parks ban right as we were approaching legalization.
Right.
I mean, that's actively working against.
Yeah, it's caused a lot of problems with our hemp stock festival.
Right.
Because the Parks Department and the police and many members of the city council have held that somehow we're responsible during our event if someone smokes in the park. Now you go to Seattle and they allow smoking in the park. But here in Portland, they want to crack down on us and throw us out of the park. Now we do have our permit for this year's Hemp Stock Festival.
Already?
Yeah, we do. It's going to be September 23rd and 24th. So you can go to hempstalk.org. That's HEMPSTALK.org for more information. But they didn't deny us our permit this year.
Wow,
fortunately.
that's really nice to hear, because it was a real hassle last year.
It was. Last year we didn't get our permit until the end of August, and we normally have our permit a week after that. So we didn't have it until mid-October, but we finally got to put it
So
together.
then can we now begin to try to negotiate for a permit that will allow us to smoke?
That's what we're trying to
That's
do.
the
You know,
next
last
step,
year
right?
we set up a smoking area that coincided with where the Parks Department allows people at the Portland Blues Festival, which is in the same footprint, the same spot as our festival, right at the west end of the Hawthorne Bridge along the Portland waterfront. And the police ordered us to tear it down right away. Well, we're not going to argue with the police. We took it down.
I smoked the biggest joint in that little section.
Before they closed it down that morning, yeah. Well, there was some people having fun there. I didn't get into it myself, but once the Parks Department and the police said, you got to shut it down, you know, we figured we'll shut it down like they say and come back another day. And, you know, sometimes our community holds us responsible for what the police force us to do. The year before that, it was a real nightmare in terms of the way they forced us to put up fences around two different parts of the park. This year, we just took all the fences down. They wanted to force us to have fences, but they caused so many problems because of them. We don't charge an admission. It's a free event, so we just took all the fences down. And they didn't really appreciate that.
You know, there's three levels of sensitivity about something. You know, so there's empathy and sympathy on one end of the spectrum, right? And then there's apathy, right, which I'm okay with. Then there's antipathy, right, the opposite of. And not only do we have a non-apathetic, but we actually have an antipathetic government that really is trying to crush the cultivating marijuana industry. Cultivating. You're on your phone in the middle of your show? Oh.
I communicate with the control room.
I was like, hold on.
So they have a video ready for us when we're ready to go. So yeah, I text the control room. They text me. We communicate through the cell phone text to the people in the studio.
Well, let's watch the video, because I forgot the point I was making.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. Well, you know, we are taking viewers' phone calls. So if you have a question for us tonight, you can call us at 503-288-4448. That's 42. 503-288-4442. So if you have a question for Jesse Sponberg about his run for mayor, Martin Martinez about the Lifevine Foundation, medical marijuana, especially in Washington State, or for any of us about hemp and cannabis, give us a call at 503-288-4442. And I guess, you know, we had our big cannabis march here this past weekend. I know you were down there and spoke at it.
That was a terrible speech, by the way.
Oh, well, we won't run that video. But did you go to your march in Seattle? It was a week earlier in Seattle.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Well, I've got some orthopedic problems. I didn't actually march, but
we have a bus that takes people who can't do the march. The Cool Bus with Joe Keating and the Green Party, which is powered on biodiesel fuel, vegetable oil. That follows up our march here for many years. So we're happy that Joe Keating's been able to provide us with that service. Long time.
My head looks small. Can I lean forward?
Sure.
Still
Lean forward. Get a big head.
I guess that's what my head looks like.
We have a video of the march. I believe we have Elvie Masika's speech. Elvie was on our show last week. She's one of the people who gets legal medical marijuana from the federal government. One of 3 individuals left that gets some of that University of Mississippi low-grade bunkweed. So here's Elvie.
Here in a place where, you know, the voters understand the needs of both the patients and the recreational people, and we all understand that for recreationalists it's the most benign, therapeutically active substance, protecting your neuroendocannabinoid systems. It's just to deny us the access to this wonderful herb is really sacrilegious. It is a war against the Creator's work. It is a war against the people. Here I am. I have been legal, authorized by the federal government for 27 years. I had to prove to FDA, DEA, and NIDA that cannabis is the most efficient, the most reliable, and the safest part of my treatment. As it turns out, today it is the only part of my treatment. And I am at an age where most of my friends have a medicine cabinet full of nasty drugs that cause them to take other drugs which play havoc on their brain, their liver, their heart, and everything else they're trying to protect that marijuana does well. Gee, it's a wonder the pharmaceutical and the health industry just don't want it to change. They will lose 50% of their business at least the day cannabis takes its rightful place in our society. I applaud you for having made so much progress, but you know the job's far from over. I don't know why we're not having million marches all over this country behind Bernie Sanders. He's the only one that's come up with a plan that just might work to end the federal war on us. This needs to change. We need to get behind this man. It's the only hope I have seen lately. Changing laws, as long as the feds say no, my doctor still doesn't have the right to practice his Hippocratic oath. In other words, he's not allowed to have the First Amendment of the Constitution, and neither are you, not really. We can rant and rave and all, but we can't even light up. After all those approvals, I don't feel free to light up right now. I don't want to hassle, cause you a problem. This is disgusting. This is ridiculous. And to charge someone that wants to start a cannabis business $5,000 when someone can open a liquor store for $500, there is something really messed up about this. We have come a long ways, but obviously we're not done with this job. We need to change it federally. You need to get rid of the clowns who oppose us. I thank you, Jennifer, for being at those meetings, for saying what needs to be said, and for running for office now. Thank you so much to all of you who keep doing things like that. It's the only thing that's really going to change everything. Remember that freedom isn't really free. So you got to make sure it gets untangled from these bureaucracies, and that your own legislators don't make you suffer. Come on, with this bureaucracy, I lost sight that I had maintained for 37 years when you got greedy and wanted more money than I could pay you for my license to honor my prescription. That's ridiculous. Like my daughter said, man-made booze, God-made pot, who do you trust? Let the true spirit of love always be your guiding light, but don't sit on the job. Don't let another Nixon come in and tear us all down. We're back to where we were in 1980. Are we going to let it all go back to hell again? We're on our way there. We are at the top of the hill. Let's make it all the way and put our flag nice and high, the hemp flag, and start taking care of our environment. Remember that the green leaf is here for the healing of the nations. Remember that, and remember that hemp can and will save the planet. Get rid of those stinky paper mills. Do the right paper with the right crops that we can harvest at least once a year. Give our workers jobs. Please get back to the hemp. You already voted it in. Let's really work at making a change. Thank you. Love you.
So that's Elvie Masica, one of the 3 remaining patients who received legal medical marijuana from the federal government. She was our the leader of our parade during last week's marijuana march, and she is a very, as you can see, inspirational lady. She's been fighting for medical marijuana since the 1980s. So you can find out more on our website if you go out to crrh.org. We have a caller who's been patiently standing by. Let's see if we can bring that caller into the show. Welcome to the show, caller. Oh, not that line. Well, if you have a question or comment for us, you can call us at that number there on your screen. It's 503-288-4442. That's 503-288-4442. So, Martin, you wanted to talk about driving in cannabis.
Well, you mentioned that.
Yeah, the AAA, the American Automobile Associations. Huh?
I think AAA is a good company.
Yeah, I've been a AAA member for 30 years pretty much.
You know, marijuana makes people crazy. If you look at the government.
Especially those people who don't use it.
The government is absolutely crazy with marijuana.
Yeah.
It's such an incredible, illogical situation. I wrote a book about the medical studies on cannabis back in 2000. The evidence is overwhelming back then.
What's the name of your book?
The New Prescription.
Uh-huh.
You can also find it at cannabismedicaldictionary.com.
Uh-huh. And Amazon.
Yes, it's on Amazon.
Over there too.
Sure. It's basically just a review of the scientific studies on cannabis. And there are so many, it's astounding. People say, the government says there's not enough research.
Your microphone's having some problems there, unfortunately. But we'll get back to you in just a second. Jesse, did you want to talk about the problems you're having? You started the Fight Church, right?
Yeah.
And that's a Monday event.
So Fight Church is a organization that we started. It's kind of like a pyramid organization, and in the middle we do a lot of charity work, and we have a Monday night, late night formatted talk show that we do. But the reason that Fight Church is relevant right now is when we first legalized marijuana, there was a catch-22 problem that we had, and that was, it was legal to possess and it was legal to smoke. It wasn't legal to buy and it wasn't legal to sell. So we couldn't figure out how to get around that law, because how corny to have to wait until October before you could start selling it to people. And so what we did was we invented Marijuana Mondays. And Marijuana Mondays, what I would do is I would just give everybody in attendance free pot.
I went to that thing, and boy, was it a lot of fun. And that place there on Hawthorne is packed.
So that's the Analog, and I worked with the owner of that, Donnie Rife, and me and him worked together, and we were giving away, 500 grams a week. Just to kind of flip off the OLCC and prohibitionists and everybody that stood in our way for so long.
So now
right?
the city government wants to flip you guys off or fine you or something.
So we created this model, right?
Right.
And then everybody adopted our model, but they started doing it wrong. So there was a couple rules that everybody understood when we first started doing that. There was no consumption on the premises. 2, you couldn't use the marijuana as a way to sell a ticket, and you couldn't use the marijuana as an incentive. Like, I couldn't say, bring me canned food and I'll give you marijuana. You still couldn't do that, right? But
right. As long as you're giving it away for free and it's not consumed on the premises, everything was cool.
So then it created like this gray area where people were using marijuana as an incentive to sell tickets to events, and nobody really cared. And that was great, though, because it made for really great non-alcohol events, because because alcohol is terrible, even though I imbibe, like once a year or something. It's terrible. So when you go to these marijuana clubs, it's a way better environment. Everybody's happy, nobody's violent, nobody's yelling at each other, nobody's talking like this, right? So it's a great environment. But, of course, everything good must come to an end. So today, right on my way here, I didn't get a lot of chance to research it or follow the links, but the press release came out from Portland's Office of Neighborhood Involvement.
So they're going to get involved.
Right, that's what they do. They get involved in the neighborhoods officially. So it's the Office of Neighborhood Involvement. For the rest of the summer, we'll call it the ONI. And so they came out with two declarations. And the first one, that anybody that was selling a ticket to go to a place where marijuana would be given away or consumed would now be considered as selling marijuana. And 2, anywhere where marijuana was being smoked on site was in some sort of Clean Air Act violation, I think. I just had time to speed read it before I got here to the studio today. But it's very important. And what that does is it speaks even more directly to the fact that we need leadership in this city
that knows what they're talking about instead of has this antipathy
yes.
toward cannabis.
Yes,
like somehow
antipathy.
We are to be controlled and put out of sight.
It's terrible. It's terrible. When you think about how much revenue we could make and how beautiful of a city we could have, all the money you could throw at schools and the homeless. And you know, here's the cool thing, people don't even really care. They'll just pay it. They'll pay the tax. I mean,
we need a public place where people can publicly use cannabis. We have nothing to be ashamed of. We have a lot to be proud of. Cannabis can change the world for the better. You know, we have a couple callers standing by.
Yes.
Let's go ahead and take a caller. Welcome to the show, caller.
Yeah, hey, Paul, thank you. I was wondering, how early can we put plants outdoors without them flowering?
You know, right now you can put plants outdoors without them flowering. We're over 14 hours of daylight. You really want to break that 14-hour barrier, get over 14 hours of daylight, and so you can put them out now. Now's the perfect time.
Super, thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, they'll start flowering in early September, and they'll be ready to go by mid-October. So now
mine are going in the morning.
All right, put them on out. Every household can have 4 marijuana plants in Oregon. I think we have another call. Welcome to the show, caller. Hello, caller.
I really want to thank you for all the work you've done fighting for our rights for cannabis. I recently saw somebody in a wheelchair, and they had a sign that said they were trying to raise money for their medical marijuana, and that, you know, once everybody gets done making all their millions and millions of dollars off of marijuana in the state, you know, I'm afraid they're going to get greedy and try to get rid of all medical programs. But if there's a nonprofit dispensary just for patients, you know I'd be more than happy to volunteer hours. There'd be lots of people that'd be more than happy, just so people aren't, you know, all everything's kind of getting messed up with the whole medical system. It is,
especially in Washington State. But we do have some regulations of dispensaries. Marijuana grows on trees. It should be cheap and plentiful.
It should be the same as a zucchini or the extra tomatoes that you just give your next door neighbor because you have an abundance.
And I have been giving away marijuana since basically 2001. Since 2001, I've given away well in excess of 6,500 pounds of marijuana to medical patients.
Make sure I introduce you to my friend Courtney before we get out of here then.
All right.
So I'd like to ask you,
hopefully
actually,
you'll come
Paul,
to our after show party.
As the resident expert, is this just growing pains?
You know,
or are we getting screwed
there
over,
are constantly going to be changes, and we just got to participate in the political process. We've got to get out there and advocate, which is you're doing it, I'm doing it, and that's what it takes, because freedom isn't free. You know, at least we're not going to jail by and large here in Oregon for simple possession and using marijuana, but across the country, a lot of people still are, and there are places in the world, Malaysia, Singapore, where you can be executed for a small amount of marijuana, less marijuana than I'm carrying with me right now. And so until we can grow hemp for fuel and grow high THC cannabis, which is 20 times more productive than the low THC hemp that they allow farmers to grow for seed right now, until we can do that, we will continue to have this artificial dichotomy. You know, an acre of hemp can produce 400 gallons of oil from 12,000 pounds of seeds, and you can pour that hemp seed oil, marijuana seed oil, right into your car engine and turn the key and it will run. Here's an example. This is hemp seed oil burning on a hemp wick. We show this here every week as our hemp flame of freedom, because when we can grow hemp without regard to its THC content, but the most productive varieties, the whole world will change. In fact, we have a little video about that. So I gave a little speech, as I'm wont to do, at the Global Marijuana March this weekend. So here it is.
Marching today in Santiago, Chile. Almost 200,000 people today in Buenos Aires, Argentina. 50,000 in Toronto, Ontario. You know, we've got some regulation of marijuana. People aren't going to jail. Our legislature's done a good job in making some good changes, a few bad changes, but some good changes. But there are a lot of people still going to jail around the world. And this is the Global Marijuana March, and we need global marijuana freedom. And so until we have that, we aren't going away. You know, marijuana prohibition was never really about drugs. Marijuana prohibition was always about money and power and the further centralization of economic and political control. Marijuana prohibition is really about energy. It's really that we can drive our cars on hemp fuel. And we will when we can grow high THC cannabis without regard to its THC content, but for the varieties that produce the best seeds and the most seeds, over 400 gallons of hemp seed per acre, with a byproduct of 4 tons of high-protein food and 40 tons of fiber. We can not only give the world clean energy, we can wipe out world hunger with the seed meal left over. We can stop deforestation with the byproduct of fiber. We can decentralize wealth by taking money out of the hands of Exxon, Mobil, the Saudi sheiks, the Nigerian despots, instead of having all that money go into their bank accounts in the Bahamas, the Caymans, the Swiss. Instead of it going there, it'll go into our farmers' pockets. And that money will enrich us all. And that's the main reason that marijuana was prohibited. It's really about a battle between the natural cycle and the synthetic cycle. And the people who brought us the lies about marijuana, the misinformation campaign, are the petrochemical, pharmaceutical, military, industrial, transnational, corporate, elite, fascist sons of a bitches. And when we can restore hemp for fuel, we will change our whole economic paradigm and reestablish freedom. You know, freedom isn't just about speech, assembly, those are important. It's also about consciousness and feeling good. And hemp grows on trees. It should be cheap. It should be plentiful. When we start growing hemp for fuel, the whole world will change. Medicine will be cheap, our economy will decentralize, and we'll have a sustainable world. And that's the goal, and that's why I'm marching today. I want to thank you guys for coming out here. Keep working until we restore hemp.
So that's what I believe. You know, when we can grow hemp without regard to its THC content, but we can grow like my varieties of cannabis that produce, 20% THC, we will see 12,000 pounds of seeds and 12,000 pounds of buds at the same time. So when we take that 12,000 pounds of seeds and we press it, you're going to get 400 gallons of oil and 4 tons, 8,000 pounds of high-protein hemp seed meal. That'll feed the world. And at the same time, you'll have 30 tons of hemp hurd fiber and 10 tons of hemp bast fiber for building material, paper, and instead of the money going to those Saudi sheiks, it'll be going to all of us. And that's what we need. And that's why marijuana is illegal. And that's why we have our hemp flame of freedom. And that's why we do this show.
How many ponchos do we get out of that?
God, I don't know. A lot. Maybe even a few Pancho Villas. So,
the Japanese were growing hemp for centuries, of course.
It's part of the Shinto religion.
Of course.
All of the accoutrements of Japanese Shinto religion are hemp. The hemp clothes, hemp ornaments. It's all in a Shinto shrine.
Well, ever since the Japanese became a satellite of the U.S., more or less, after the war, of course, the hemp farmers have been given non-THC or very low
Douglas
THC
MacArthur When he took control of Japan in 1945, one of the very first things he did was ban hemp.
Right. Well, they still grow it there, but the farmers, they still want to grow their original stock.
Right.
Because as you were saying, the higher THC hemp is actually a better
Much more
quality
productive.
product. And the government's been, trying to enforce low THC hemp, but it's just not as good.
You know, the Prime Minister's wife in Japan, Akie Abe, is an advocate for hemp for fuel, fiber, and food. And I am excited. I don't think you know this, but on July 2nd, I've been honored to be invited to the Kyoto Hemp Forum in Kyoto, Japan. And the main speaker is Akie Abe, the First Lady of Japan, the Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's wife, also the mayor of Kyoto, and many Japanese kanushi, the priests who lead services at a Shinto shrine. So I'm honored to be able to go there and speak on the same podium on July 2nd. So you didn't know that, but thanks for giving me that great segue.
Sure. Anytime.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of people say that hemp, the original hemp was not high THC. That's nonsense.
Yeah, that is.
It was engineered to be low THC in the modern era.
Yeah.
So we know that all these hemp cultures from antiquity were actually growing medicine as well.
That's right. That's absolutely right. No, hemp prohibition was about fuel. That's the main thing that marijuana prohibition has always been about.
And paper.
Yeah, yeah. But and the cotton industry also didn't mind seeing hemp prohibited too. There were a number of southern cotton farmers who and lobbyists that were happy to see.
It's all about money.
It's all about money.
That's
power.
what I learned. When I got arrested in '96, I had a lot of, cultural revolutionary ideas, and I thought I was really, trying to help the world. But I found out right away, when the government sees marijuana, they see money. That's all they see. So we just need to, promote the good qualities of cannabis, and money is a necessary evil in our society, but that is, the farthest thing from what a patient is thinking about when they're in dire pain.
That's right. The pharmaceutical drugs that they give people for pain addict them in 72 hours. Anytime a doctor prescribes any opiate or synthetic pharmaceutical for more than 3 days, they are addicting their patient to these narcotics. The longer you're on them, the more addicted you become.
Absolutely. There was a great big stink today about the rising deaths due to opioids.
Yeah, and in states where medical marijuana is allowed, the rate of death from opioids and synthetic painkillers has gone down significantly. So we need hemp for pain, for cancer, for so many different things on this planet. I think it's a sacred plant, just like the Shinto people of Japan believe. This is a sacred plant that our Mother Earth, God, Goddess, whatever deity you want to worship, they gave us cannabis, and it's the most productive plant. Produces more fuel than any other plant. Produces more fiber than any other plant. Produces more protein and food than any other plant. Produces more medicine than any other plant. And it produces more fun than any other plant, And so marijuana prohibition is evil, and the sooner we can wipe it off the face of the earth and into the ash bins of history, the better off we all will be. So, we are just about out of time here. Is there anything you want to, a website or anything you want to refer people to find out about the Lifevine Foundation and getting your book?
Lifevine is found at Lifevine Group, LifeVineGroup.org.
LifeVineGroup.org.
Correct. I also have a website called SacredCannabis.com, which talks a lot about all the ancient religions throughout virtually every major culture that you can imagine. Hemp and cannabis have been used by our ancestors. It's a part of our ethnic and a part of our biological heredity. And you just can't get away from that. The truth will come out. There's no way it will be suppressed forever.
Jesse Sponberg for mayor?
Just Sponberg for mayor.
Sponberg for mayor.
I just want to tell everybody the last day to turn in your ballot. It's too late to put them in the mailbox right now. They got to be put in somewhere by 8 p.m. You can go to any library.
8 p.m. Tuesday.
8 p.m. Tuesday, yeah, sorry. 8 p.m. Tuesday, May 17th. They got to go to a library or an elections office. But there's libraries all over around here still, thank goodness.
Yeah, yeah. So that's in the Oregon primary. We recommend you vote for Bernie Sanders, too, just because he's the only one that's been for completely descheduling marijuana. Well, I want to thank you for coming on, Jesse,
guys, man.
and thank you
Thank
as
you very
well,
much.
Martin. You know, if you want to find out more about us, look at crrh.org. That's crrh.org. Thank you for watching. We're going to go out on another great tune by Mr. John Cornette. Tune back in next week. Maybe we'll be able to say Jesse's in the runoff for mayor. Help us restore hemp. Okay.
Some folks like to make toast, some like rhubarb pie. I like when my vegetables give me a little high. May not be whatever may not fit your needs, but it's incredible edible vegetable, more than just a weed.